Welcome to the My Inner Struggle podcast. I'm your host, Laura Ferry. I am so happy that you're here with me today. I'm so grateful to be here, and this is a topic that I feel very strongly about and have been working through myself in the last few years. So, in today's episode, we'll be diving deeply into the importance of setting healthy boundaries in all different areas of our life, from your finances to personal relationships, work, and even your kids. Boundaries are important. They're vital in maintaining our emotional health, personal growth, and peace of mind. By the end of this episode, you'll have actionable steps to use moving forward. So grab your favorite beverage and come get uncomfortable with me. So let's dig in. I am really grateful that you're here because this is something that I have struggled with for as long as I can remember, honestly. And sometimes that happens when we've grown up in an environment where our boundaries weren't really respected. And so we grow up kind of violating our own boundaries as we navigate through relationships. So let's talk a little bit about what boundaries mean exactly. So they're guidelines that protect your emotional, mental, and physical well-being. They're all important. And we have boundaries that we have to set in all of these different aspects of our life. So they're important because they help you preserve the energy and respect your own needs and wants and desires and ensure that relationships are built on mutual respect, which is vital because if you don't have a relationship built on mutual respect, it's not it's not a good one at all. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It can feel selfish, especially when you start setting them, and the people around you that have been used to always getting the things that they need or want from you may not understand why this is all of a sudden happening. And it's no fault of anybody. They may not even realize that they're violating a boundary because it's you that needs to set the boundary and define what is okay and what isn't okay. And then they have the opportunity then to respect that boundary and move forward or not. Um, so let's start with money. So that's an interesting one. Poor financial boundaries can lead to stress, debt, resentment, all of those things. Lending money to family or friends when you can't afford it, you're sacrificing something of yours. Not that we shouldn't be charitable and giving to people, but if it puts you in a bad position, that's a boundary that you should set for yourself. Um, Agreeing to financial obligations that don't align with your values or needs. If somebody say, is asking to borrow money for something that you're kind of not in alignment with, it's okay to say no. Even if you're in a good financial position that you can do that, it's okay to say no. Saying no or not saying no to people who pressure you to spend things you don't want or need. So if you have, friends or whatever that are constantly, wanting to go out to dinner and you can't really afford it, but you don't really want to miss out, you're violating your own boundary. You need to respect yourself and your own boundary so that you can get to where you need to go and feel good about it. There's nothing worse than trying to keep up with everybody when you really can't, and then you're sitting there not having a great time anyway. So that is a boundary to set with yourselves, learning to say or knowing it's okay to say no to certain things if they're not aligning where you are or where you want to be. So setting some healthy financial boundaries would be sticking to a budget. Set a clear budget and stick to it. And of course, it's going to take some time to figure out where you land in that exactly. But you can prioritize and then accomplish, or get closer to what you want to accomplish if you're setting a healthy budget for yourself and then sticking to that. Um, Prioritize. Spend money on things that align with where you want to be. Maybe not even where you currently are, but where you want to be, the values and the goals. So if you have something that you're trying to save for, that's important. we don't want to necessarily, I'm sort of like half, and we don't want to necessarily not live our life now, but there's healthy boundaries to be set about spending money and like where it's going. A good rule of thumb is, to put a certain percentage away to save for that thing. And then, and then you have like your fun money to be, to go and do those other things with your friends or family. And I talk about a lot about budgeting, in the self-love club too, or with my individual coaching clients, more or less, more often than not, and setting up a budget, that aligns with our goals. More often than not, as a sidebar, when people come to me for individual coaching and we kind of go through their budget and they have these lofty goals that they want to achieve, they are spending so much more than they ever realized that they did. So, a way to kind of get ahead on that is to take an inventory of what you're spending so that you know where you have to be, because you can't get to where you're going without directions. So learning to say no is also next on, requesting, if friends or family are asking for money, learning to say no, is a healthy boundary that you can set. Or, uh, even if you need the language of how to say it, Google something. If you're not sure how to respond to it, there are so much information out there and examples that you can use if you need help getting the words to actually turn down that request. If that's the hard part, is the confrontation and not knowing what to say. There's a lot of information out there, and if you need any help, shoot me a message. I can always help. Moving into communicating clearly about all of these goals, each one of them, not just money, but all of them that we're going to talk about today. Be transparent about your financial situation and your goals with your loved ones. If they, part of understanding is knowledge. So if you can, not that you have to share your business with everybody, but if somebody's asking you for money and you have a set goal that you're working towards, and it really wouldn't help you get there, and like, you're allowed to say that and share that with them, and so that they can better understand. And if they are upset about that, that's okay. You have to kind of let them be upset about it. So, just to wrap up the financial part before we dive into like the next topic, is just reviewing your finances this week. So let's take actionable steps to review our finances this week and decide on a new financial boundary if you need to set one for yourself. Stop lending money if you can't afford to, or whatever it is. Let's talk about relationships. So, romantic and not romantic relationships. These are friendships, people that we've known for a long time or maybe a short time. Um, Boundaries in relationships, all relationships, are super, super important, so that both parties feel heard. We have to communicate clearly and abundantly always. We want to be heard, respected, and valued, which is essential in a healthy dynamic. We can't live without it. I mean, we float around every day with a lot of toxic relationships around us that lack mutual respect. And so the more the more relationships that you can have in your life that have better, healthier boundaries, the better off you will be, in all aspects of life, because everything spills out onto something else as well. So let's talk about an example of what an unhealthy boundary in a relationship, or a friendship, romantic or not romantic, relationship, may look like. And that would be purely allowing other people to disrespect you right to your face or behind your back, disrespect your time and your energy. There has to be a give and take. No one should be the only one pouring into the relationship. Over giving in relationships, to the point of burnout or resentment. That was my number one thing. And both romantic relationships, significant romantic relationships that I've had, and in a lot of friendships, I was always the doer, and I would then grow resentful. But that is my problem, because that is not the boundary, a healthy boundary that I set with myself. So for the past few years, I've been really, really working on that and learning about that and setting much, much healthier boundaries for myself so that I don't feel burned out or resentful, being the only one contributing to the friendship or relationship. Um, Tolerating toxic behavior or abusive patterns, emotional, verbal, physical, any of those, that's an unhealthy boundary, and you need to address that immediately. So, we've talked about, examples of unhealthy, and let's set some boundaries together. So, setting healthy boundaries in relationships would be about communicating your needs. Clearly express what is and isn't acceptable, period. If you are talking to your partner, about how you feel about a certain topic, or the way they reacted to something, or their action after you told them something, if they uh, cut you out or whatever, that's not healthy. And that definitely should be discussed. And if Actually, we'll stop there and I'll keep going. So we want to respect our time and energy. Respecting your time. If somebody's always showing up late when you have plans, that's not respecting your time. I mean, shit happens, yeah, but every time if they're showing up late when you have plans, that's not respecting your time, and you definitely deserve a conversation about mutual respect and boundaries on time. And maybe it's just an unset expectation, or knowing that, what I've been researching a lot lately has been about um, kind of being a doormat, and realizing that I was kind of a doormat in relationships, and I was doing and doing and doing. And I never really labeled myself as that until recently. And I've been reading these books on it. And, you get annoyed, at the fact that someone is constantly violating your boundaries. And then it blows up into something. And so a way to have that conversation about, um, respecting your time and energy together, you can start saying no. You can say, you know what, if you're going to be here after a certain time, then I think I'm good, or I'm heading out, or this dinner is at this time, or whatever. That's okay. So another thing actually is recognizing red flags, and this is especially true in toxic relationships with toxic people, and patterns, and take action to protect yourself. I actually just read a really, really great book that I highly, highly recommend, and have recommended it to several clients and several friends already. And it just came out about a month ago. Let Them by Mel Robbins. It's on my favorites list on myinnerstruggle.com. You can link it there. I have a lot of great reads there. Um, and it's all about, you're presenting this friend or partner with this information. And if they are not responding well, let them not respond well. The actions, it's all about the actions. And if they don't take action to change that behavior that they now know is hurting you or violating your boundary, then let them go do their thing, because that's not your person. And, um, you know, it's really interesting. So that book connected a lot of dots for me and spoke so many good things. It's like one of the best self-help books I think I've ever read. So again, that's Let Them by Mel Robbins, and you can find it on the favorites list on myinnerstruggle.com. So, boundaries, having these discussions is not a one time conversation. You have to be consistent, especially when the boundary is having trouble being maintained. So, if you have, your partner or whatever is showing up when you're supposed to hang out, and they're constantly late, you can mention those things, but at some point you have to like let them do their thing and then decide, is this worth having another discussion? Or if the boundary continues to be violated, then maybe a bigger discussion needs to be had about the entirety of the relationship. So, an action step for this week is think of one relationship where you've been over accommodating. So, what boundary is it? And what boundary can you set today, um, to make that happen? So, is it that you need more alone time, or you need to limit the amount of time that you're on the phone, or asking for help for something? Think about one relationship in your life where you need to set a healthy boundary where you've been over accommodating for that person. So let's roll into work. Um, Setting boundaries at work helps prevent burnout for sure. Um, when you're not burned out, you are way more productive, obviously, and it fosters a healthier work life balance for yourself. Work life balance is tough, especially um, when the expectations of you are constantly being increased, and it's just not. It's tricky. It's tricky because yes, it is your livelihood, and yes, you need to complete the job that is required of you. However, there are so many unhealthy work boundaries that we can discuss. So overworking and not taking time off, or being, making it impossible to take time off, that leads to much exhaustion and a lot of stress that leaks out into all other areas of your life. Allowing work to invade your personal life, period. It should not be invading your personal life. Answering emails late at night, or responding to text messages in the middle of the night, or early in the morning. You know, I try, like, with my employees, to, even if I send a message, I'm like, I do not expect you to respond at any time other than like when you're actually working, which is tricky because these are people that already have a full-time job generally, and they're doing this kind of on the side. So sometimes they're up late at night, and we kind of have this mutual respect and have laid it out there, and there is no expectation as far as a response time, unless it was some sort of emergency, then we're talking. But try not to feed too much into, say, the guilt of answering things, or your personal space being invaded by work on off hours. And I just went off on a tangent there, but not speaking up about unrealistic expectations or unfair workload distribution. That is definitely something that you need to address. If it's bothering you, you should say something about it. That is the whole fucking point. You need to communicate when something is bothering you, whether it's in your personal relationship, in partnership, at work, or with your kids. You need to communicate. That's the whole point. So let's talk about turning these around so we can set some healthy boundaries at work. Know your limits, define your hours, and stick to it. That's your job. It's your job. It is not your life. We already spend most of our lives at work with those people that we work with. When we leave, we shouldn't have to keep working. And that's when all the life happens. So we definitely want to define our hours and stick to it. Prioritizing your tasks. Focus on important tasks and learn to delegate or decline them whenever necessary. And you're probably thinking, like, how do I decline something that I'm supposed to be working on? It's simple. I have too much on my plate right now, and I don't have any more bandwidth to add anything else to it. So I cannot work on this, or you can take something else off my plate and then I can take that on. Prioritize. Again, setting clear expectations, communicate with your boss and your colleagues about your workload, your limits, and your need for breaks, whether it's physical or mental. You are entitled to that, and you should definitely be taking your breaks. Take your fucking lunch. Go sit in your car for a half an hour if you have to. Get away from your desk. I was guilty of that for far too long. You have to set your boundaries. It's really, really important for your mental health, without a doubt, and your physical health, because mind body connection is so intertwined. It's not even funny. Take care of yourself. Make self-care a priority, even when you have a deadline looming, without a doubt. If you have a deadline coming, nothing, you can't put that in front of your own mental and physical well-being. And it's just not possible. There are deadlines, and you know what? It'll work out in the end, I promise you. Um, and you can also sort of prioritize and plan ahead better. So if you're someone that procrastinates and waits until the last minute to dive into a project, let's plan better so that you don't have to be under the wire there till midnight working on something or what have you. So this week, take an actionable step to set a clear boundary at work. So whether it's stop checking your emails at 7 o'clock or dedicate one day to self-care for yourself on your off hours or something like that. Um, Sometimes when bosses are so used to you violating your own boundaries and working and working and working and working and working, when you start setting those boundaries, they may not react the best, and that's okay. Keep setting the boundary and stick to it and be consistent. If your boundaries continually get violated after you've set the healthy boundary and communicated it clearly, then maybe it's time to make a change. And that's okay too. It might seem like a daunting task, but if you are unhappy where you are at your job, there are so many fucking jobs out there that would be happy to have you and not violate your healthy boundary that you have set for yourself. So think about that. That doesn't have to define you whatsoever. Next, I want to talk about kids, and this one's interesting to me because I have some good examples actually. So, setting boundaries with your children creates structure and teaches them respect for themselves, and you're then setting the example um, of you respecting your own boundaries too. So, our kids are watching us all the time. So if you are taking actionable steps to set a healthy boundary, they're not going to like it in the moment, and that's okay. They don't have to like everything, but it'll make them a better person without a doubt. Um, and it also ensures that like us as parents are not stretched too thin and doing everything for our kids, because we have to show our kids how to do stuff so that they know how to do stuff. Otherwise, they don't know how to do stuff. So, we've talked about this on the podcast actually with Ben from Benny's Bodega, and how each of the kids have their chores and they may not like it, but this is what it takes to live in this house so that we can all be together. I am the same way. They don't necessarily love the jobs that they have to do. I don't think I'm not really consistent with what I get them because I like to vary it up. But each week they definitely have things that they have to accomplish because I can't do it all myself. And that's how we work as a team. And if we want to be able to spend fun time together, then I need their help. So that is a healthy boundary that I've set for my kids, or with my kids, I should say. And we talk about it constantly. So let's talk about the unhealthy boundaries that we set with our kids, or that we have not set with our kids. Um, Overindulging or giving into every demand. So just because your 8-year old is on the, stomping up and down the stairs or whatever because they didn't get what they wanted, doesn't mean that you should give them what they wanted. My 9-year old actually will sometimes kind of have a fit over not being able to get something, and it'll go on and on and on and on forever. Or the attitude goes on and on and on forever. And I said, listen, I go, this is definitely not how we get what we want. So if that's something that you want to get eventually in the future, this probably isn't going to get you there. So you definitely should, you know, perk up and let's decide to do better, you know? And it's an interesting one, but I have more to talk about that too. So, not enforcing any rules or consequences for things. Kids these days, kids these days, they have it so different than we did when we were kids. And it's not necessarily our fault. It's, the day and age that we live in with technology and things are at our fingertips and instant gratification and all of their friends and da, da, da. And we didn't have any insight into that. Sure, there was definitely things that were like, well, this one has this Barbie doll, but I don't, or whatever. But it's not in your face all the time, and they're not constantly communicating about it. But not enforcing rules or consequences because of the behavior is a huge problem. There are a lot of kids walking around entitled and without any, like there is no consequence because they can just do whatever they want or act however they want. So we'll dive deeper into that on another episode, but not enforcing rules or consequences and not making time for self-care because you're constantly putting your kids' needs first. So as a single mom, sometimes that can be tough to carve out for yourself, or as a single dad, or even as a married mom. Like we have to allow ourselves to set that good example for our kids of taking care of ourselves. And it's really important that our kids see that we take care of ourselves because we lead by example. They see everything, they hear everything. That's what they notice, not necessarily the 10 times that you told them to pick up their socks, but you didn't do anything about it. So if they didn't pick up their dirty socks off their floor, what is the consequence? So now that we know that, how to set healthy boundaries with our kids. Consistency. And you notice on all of these things, it's consistency. On getting to your goals, it's consistency. Everything has to do with consistency. We can't do something once and expect everything to change. It's not going to happen. So establish and stick to clear rules and routines. And that's been working wonders here. We could, things are constantly changing, whether it's a season with sports or a different thing with school or whatever. We have to dive into that and know that we'll have to adjust ourselves and our boundaries and communicate clearly every single season. We want to teach respect. So we want to emulate how we want to receive that respect and the behavior. And that's super important. So we have this bedtime thing with my youngest. She was having a hard time going to bed. And at some point, she started just saying no to me. And my initial reaction is like, well, don't say no. And then we had to have a conversation about that. And I'm like, well, that's not really respecting me, in a way. If I'm saying it's time to go to bed, you definitely just don't shoot back a no. So we've had to work on that. Um, Prioritizing self-care. So I've talked about it often, how you need to fill your own cup. And especially as a parent, you're pouring out of that cup constantly. So prioritizing your own self-care is a really, really healthy boundary that you can set for yourself that will then sprinkle out into all of the other relationships in your life, including and most importantly, your children. And again, setting that example. They know that you take care of yourself so that they have that example to see for themselves. And as they get older and grow up and develop their own routines, that they remember, I remember my mom, took care of herself. I remember she would meditate in the morning or whatever it is. Involve them in decisions. So I found that my two older children respect me a lot more because I kind of treat them like adults. And it's kind of strange that they're 16 and 18, which they are basically adults. But when we're talking about a family decision, I get their input and kind of see what they say. Even if I know what my action is going to be already, if I involve them in the decision or they feel like they have some say in it, it gains you a lot of respect from your children. And it also kind of it makes them respect themselves a little bit too, that they have this opinion about this important decision. And it gives them a little bit of confidence too in the mix. So for this week, there's a lot of action. Pick one rule or boundary to establish with your kids. So, whether it's no screens during mealtime or a new bedtime routine, which is something that we've been working on, but make sure you implement it consistently. So, one thing that I want to mention to that is the my youngest with her phone. She has like an old phone of mine that we use as an iPod, and she can FaceTime with her friends. And bedtime has been a struggle for a little while, and we've been working on that, and it's gotten so much better. And one of the things, she'd be like on her phone playing a game or something like that. And she really, really wanted to be able to charge that phone in her room at night. And I said, absolutely not, because I need you, and it's not a punishment, but I need you to get a good night's sleep. And we need not that screen not to go off in the middle of the night when there's an update or whatever. And she had a really, really hard time with that. But we've now gotten to the point where we'll be walking and she hands me the phone and we're all good. So staying consistent is really, really important. So let's wrap it up. Let's talk about these boundaries and how we can set them, being firm but flexible in the approach, right? Boundaries don't have to be rigid. We don't want to build a wall. We want to set a healthy boundary, which has give and take to it. And they can evolve over time. If you start with a smaller one and then work your way up to something larger, especially with children, because that's hard. They're kind of like, it's always been this way. Why is it changing? And they may not understand the importance on your end of why that boundary needs to be set until they're a little bit older. Um, and life circumstances are always changing. So our boundaries are going to be changing, and the things that we allow into our life, and so on and so forth. The biggest takeaway, I would say, is communication. You have to communicate clearly. If you are setting a boundary in a relationship, in work, with your children, well, I take the children out of this one, but if we're setting a boundary in work or in a friendship or partnership, communication is everything. It is with your kids too, but communication is everything. And then if they are not respecting your boundary, then it's up to you to have another conversation about that boundary being violated and decide if you need to have a bigger conversation about the relationship. But be open about them and revisit them whenever you feel like you need to, because that is up to you. You need to practice self-awareness. And sometimes, if you haven't been doing that, it's sort of like observing yourself from above. Essentially, you're observing your behavior and your triggers and when you might feel that a boundary is being crossed. That's how we realize that, that angsty feeling or whatever, when we know like we don't want to do something and we really should say no, because it really, really doesn't feel good. Listen to your body and be mindful when your boundaries are being tested. That's telling you something. And write it down if you need to. If you're not ready to confront it right there and then, and actually you probably shouldn't confront them right there and then. You don't want to do something in the heat of the moment and say something that you might regret, which I've definitely done without a doubt. The most important thing I would say, to take away from that is, and I haven't even mentioned it, but I mention this all the time, is to surround yourself with supportive people. Supportive people that are not going to violate your boundaries, that also understand the importance of setting a healthy boundary, who respect you and honor those boundaries. That is really, really important, and you deserve that. So, we talked about money, we talked about relationships, we talked about work, and we talked about kids. And you have four good action items for this week to tackle setting those healthy boundaries. And maybe you're at the point where you have pretty good healthy boundaries, but maybe they just need a little bit of reinforcing. Or maybe you're at the other end of the spectrum and you have people violating your boundaries left and right. Wherever you are, I am here for you. If you need any help, shoot me a message or an email. Go to myinnerstruggle.com and shoot me a message through the contact form. I want you to try to identify one boundary that you will set this week. If it's not a work one, maybe it's a kid one or what have you. And start implementing that. If you need help getting there, shoot me a message. I am here for you. And setting boundaries is going to be an ongoing process. We have to be consistent. And just like our own personal growth, we're going to continue learning and growing, and our circumstances change. And so those are going to follow suit too. So I am so glad that you're here with me today. I hope that you found this valuable. If you have any feedback or comments or questions or anything like that, please feel free to shoot me a message. Thank you for being here so much with me. I appreciate it. Make sure that if you enjoyed the episode to hit like and subscribe wherever you are watching. Please check out the blog at myinnerstruggle.com and follow me on social media. There is so much more information to be shared. And make sure you check out the Self-Love Club to gain confidence through community and connection. Check it out on myinnerstruggle.com and read through it and see if it's for you. And if you're not sure, send me a message. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. Thank you so much for listening. I am so glad that you're here and I'm so grateful. I am thinking of you and sending you love, and I will see you soon.